And with that, Mrs. Burner, if you will call the roll.
Sure. Mayor Lowry is absent. Councilman Grimm.
Here.
Councilman Rodwald.
Here.
Councilwoman Nowakowski.
Here.
Councilman Cobb.
Here.
Councilwoman Eggleston.
Yep.
And Vice Mayor Cook.
I'm here.
That is 6 members present.
And with that, we'll have the invocation by Councilman Cobb.
Dear Heavenly Father, give us the right guidance to do what we think is right for the citizens. Help us get through this pandemic, which is coming down. Watch over our first responders, our fire and EMS, our law enforcement, our sheriffs. Also watch over our military and their families. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. And our pledge of allegiance will be by Councilman Grimm. I pledge allegiance
to
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
justice for all.
One of these days, we might get that together.
We've been pretty good.
I doubt it.
The mayor wasn't here, so we've pretty good in sync.
There you go. Anyhow, there's no action on the minutes. Mr. Bridge, have you got any communications you want to share?
Let me see, my iPad went to sleep, so let me get this up. Last time I checked right before the meeting, we did not have any. Just want to see my face. Let me just do a quick refresh. No new messages at this time.
All right. City manager's report, we'll get into that in the regular meeting. And the comments from the members of the public, we've already asked for that. Committee reports none, resolutions, ordinance none, and we'll open it up for other business.
Awesome. Thank you, Vice Mayor Cook. So we'll do the legislation discussion real quick. So the resolution we have on tonight, which will be introduced and voted on council tonight, is a resolution authorizing the gift of unneeded city property. We had the same resolution title last meeting, having to deal with donating the World Thread sign to the New Carlisle Historical Society. And what this one does is actually donates our old and VHF radio equipment to the Jefferson Community Fire Company. So I know Fire Chief is here with us tonight, and all the legislation that we're going to be discussing tonight actually involves his department. But this is some units that we no longer use because we contract out with Clark County. We're in the MARC system. So instead of me just sitting there collecting dust, Fire Chief had come to my office, wanting to know if we can donate those. Of course, that is ultimately council's decision, but this is a fire company that can definitely benefit from those. Fire Chief, is there anything you would like to add before council ensues discussion?
What this is that we can no longer use the VHF radios at all, period, because we are totally marks. The county is totally marks. And this is a small fire company, all volunteer. And it's where our fire department started at, being a volunteer. And it's a thing that departments do. We donate to pass it down the line or try to pay it forward, just like our SCBA compressor that we're using now was donated to us by Christiansburg Fire Department. So it's just one of those things that departments do to help out each other.
Councilman Grimm, you had a question.
Where is this fire company? What community?
I want to say it's
I wanna say-
35, isn't it, sir?
Yeah,
By Drexel and all that.
yeah, it's out of way. It's out of way.
Jefferson Township. Okay.
Yes.
It's a small volunteer fire. The difference between a fire department and fire company, they basically belong to themselves.
Is this the one that's off of West 3rd out there? Is that the one?
I'm not for sure. I'd have to look. The gentleman how I first met their chief, he came to me because they were redoing their SOPs and bylaws and that type of thing. And he was wanting to get some information how we did ours and what ours looked like. that type of thing. And then we started talking about radio systems, and he was telling me they're a long way away from the Mark system, and that they're still solely dependent on the VHS system.
Okay, Dan?
So Chief, you're saying these are just sitting in the firehouse collecting dust. We're
Yes,
not
sir.
using them. Okay.
Yes, sir. It's what we solely, that's what we depended on up until we went to the Mark system.
Anybody else got any other questions? If not, Mr. Bridge will go from there.
Well, thank you. The two ordinances we have on tonight, they're both introduction only, so council will see action of those at the first meeting in March. That is ordinance 2021-03. And it's an ordinance authorizing the city manager to purchase a new command vehicle for the fire and EMS department. And ordinance 2021-04, which is an ordinance authorizing the city manager to purchase new Jaws of Life for the fire and EMS department. Both of those ordinances will be funded out of the fire and EMS capital line item. And both of those items have been in the CIP. So the new command vehicle, fire chief, the one we have is currently pretty old. I know we just talked about that. It's a 2007 Dodge Durango, and we do want to replace that with a newer version of the same vehicle. Fire chief, did you hear any of that?
Yes, sir. Actually, what we're replacing is not a Durango, it's a pickup truck, but you're right on the year 2007 Dodge pickup. But we're replacing it with a 2021 Dodge Durango Police Edition Interceptor, which will have it'll have heavier suspension, heavier brakes, would last a lot longer for us. It'll do a lot better job. And with it being the Interceptor, it takes the gear shift off the floorboard and puts it on the column, leaving room for us for radio, siren box, and all that to be installed in between.
Okay. And the other ordinance is Jaws of Life. What can you tell us about our current set that you operate with, sir?
Our current set right now is a hydraulic set, which means it has the hoses connected to it. It works off of a generator, has to start, or a motor that pumps the hydraulic into the lines. It's over 15 years old. And right now our cutters, when you say Jaws of Life, it incorporates a lot of different pieces of equipment. It's not just the spreader, the jaws, it's also a cutter. It's also rams, which spread, when we're opening cars, we use a ram to spread them open. Ours are 15 years old, over 15 years old, and our cutters right now will not cut the new metal that cars are made out of. Will not cut steering wheels, won't cut a lot of the newer style metals. And what we're looking at buying is all battery operated. That's what most fire services departments have gone to now. They will cut the new metal, and we'll be purchasing a spreader, the jaws itself, cutters, a ram with a extension, and also rescue jacks, which means we can stabilize the vehicle if it's on its side or top. It gives us a stabilization equipment, which we don't have at this time. And we'll also be purchasing with that what's called a crash pack, which is a pack that you open up. It has windshield saws, punches, also has blanket covering a victim up while we're doing the extrication, that type of thing. So small hand tools that we use during auto extrications. And we'll also be trading in our old set, and they will be giving us money back on that. The reason for that, first thought was to keep the old set as a backup, but it's not really worth to keep it for a backup and pay the maintenance fee that we would have to pay each year to have that equipment serviced and maintenance and maintained when it's not capable of doing the proper job.
Any comments from council? No questions. Mr. Bridge?
That is all for the legislation discussion tonight, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Mr. Grimm had a question, sir.
Go ahead.
I'm not an expert on truck prices, but it seems to me like 35,000 is a pretty good deal, isn't it?
We actually got it for less than that, sir. That's what we had in our CIP for 30. We had in our CIP for 35. We're actually getting the truck for cheaper than that, but the rest of that money will go for light bar and sirens and decaling.
Oh, I see, 31,806.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the reason, sir, that I know a few times we had put the dollar amount on there to the penny, and then something would come up extra for like 3, 4, maybe $10. So we have to go back to council to amend that. So I just decided to put the 35 not to exceed amount because that's what the CIP had stated.
Any other questions?
Sounds good to me.
Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Chief, we're not concerned about going from a Dodge Ram with a full bed to a Durango? We don't
No,
want
sir, we're not, because we really, the truck was an overkill for us, to be quite honest with you. The
Okay,
bed of that truck really doesn't have anything in it.
okay. I mean, I've never been in the back. I didn't know if you
Yeah,
carried
it's
anything in the
not,
back.
it doesn't carry anything in the back. I mean, it's a great truck to have, like we are hauling hose back from a fire or something like that. But the Durango would be more sufficient, more economic for us to use.
Okay,
And what most looking police and fire, that's what most people, most fire and EMS both have gone to for staff vehicles.
okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good questions.
All right, and Mr. Bridge, you have anything else?
That is all for the legislation discussion. I think we're at open to city business. So any other questions relating to the legislation? Absolutely. If not, Mr. Cook, I think I'm good.
All right, do you want to open it up to the question of having Christie and the magistrate come forward either in the work session or the regular session next meeting?
Yeah, I think that'd be great for discussion, but we won't be able to do any kind of official voting until regular session. But since
No
we've got
problem.
some time, absolutely. Yeah.
I personally would just as soon see both of them at the work session, and consequently, I think we can do more of a, I guess the word is off the cuff discussion with them at that point rather than doing it in a regular session. I know Mike and I had talked with the magistrate and both Christie at great length the night we were over there, and he's a wealth of information as well as Christie is. And I think they'll bring forth a lot of information that we're going to need before we get this project going. Anybody else have any other thoughts on it?
I agree with you. Bring them in on the work session. That way we can get it done, get them out of here.
And the sooner the better.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they could be here in 10 minutes,
We'll get on the phone here.
Go ahead, Mr. Graham.
I attended a South Charleston mayor's court. Oh, it's been years ago. And if that's the same guy, he's generally a nice guy. He was explaining everything to the people that were there, explaining things in quite detail on how it proceeded, how things operated. It's just,
And I would assume he was, because he is the magistrate over at South Charleston. And in talking with him, they are also on twice a month, but he felt with the caseload, they may go back to only once a month over there. So in looking at Sergeant Lehman's report, I saw there were quite a few, will I say, arrests or tickets or citations issued. And consequently, I think that it's going to be a busy a couple of weeks or a couple of meetings for court session. Go ahead.
would we be handling things like felony arrests, or would that go through the other courts?
And I think this is the thing that we're going to be bringing out with the magistrate at that meeting, the next meeting. I don't think we're gonna get into the felonies. I think we might get into the first case of DWI. But as I understood him, there are ways around some of the situations so that we may not have, let's say, a lot of the jail costs that would be associated with some of these cases.
Because look, misdemeanor arrests and traffic citations, that's a total of 37. That's not a whole lot. That's probably
Well,
what it court
Well,
time.
then are we going to add in the city violations for property and
Yeah.
others?
Code maintenance, yes, I
Code
would
maintenance.
think that.
Thank you, sorry, Bill.
We probably would have 4 or 5 of those maybe in a session. I'm not sure at that point. But I would think that the night we were over there, we saw only 2 cases over at Enon. And if you start throwing 25 or 30 cases a night, that's going to be quite an agenda.
I agree.
Anybody else?
Nope.
Anything else, Mr. Bridge, that you want to bring up?
No, I just want to piggyback off of you're going to see some more increased traffic patrols when it comes to our police. So when we look at that report that was just submitted, we see the increase on that. Those numbers hopefully continue to go up. So I don't know how many people have been out and about with COVID or the weather lately. But I'm curious to see what we plateau at. I think for the first couple months, we're going to be kind of gauging, how many cases we're going to have. And honestly, too, the seasons are going to play a big part of this. You can assume like in your winter and when you're in your colder months, we're not going to have as many probably code enforcement as we would during the spring and summer when people are out and not cutting the grass, et cetera, et cetera. So I see that kind of going. But I don't know. I'm curious to see where we plateau at. Because I think once we hit that plateau, council will then be able to make that determination. All right, we need to have 2 or 1 a month or however you guys want to do it. Or, depending on what kind of cases you want to see, you may want to do, if we have a higher average and, we can't get through some of like first round DUIs, is that something that council puts off to the higher courts and then focuses on the other stuff? But I think it's going to take a couple months to get our data points down. But I think once we have those data points, we'll definitely be able to use that moving forward.
Anybody else? Does anybody have anything else that they would like to bring forth?
I need to excuse Mayor Lauer.
Okay, you want to do that in this session or do it in a regular session? I would assume that he will be joining us in the regular session from he and I's discussion earlier.
I'd say go ahead and do it now. Then
Yeah, we can do it in this one.
Move to excuse.
Second.
Okay, we have by Ms. Negowowski and a second by Mr. Rodewald. Any other comment?
No,
If you
no,
will,
sir.
call the roll, Mrs. Burner.
Okay, Councilman Okowski,
Yes.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilwoman Eggleston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cook,
Yes,
Councilman Grimm,
Yes.
and Councilman Rodewald.
Yes.
All right, that motion to excuse Mayor Lowry passes 6-0.
6-0. If not, go ahead, Linda.
I just wanted to bring up, I sent you all an email on it, but I've been holding Zoom meetings that people can come to and just talk about things that they'd like to see happening in the community, how those things might come about, and just talking about the community, trying to build some communication. And without a license, a Zoom meeting is limited to 40 minutes, and that was not sufficient the first couple of times that I did it. And so I went ahead and bought a license. And if anybody else would like to use that license, please let me know if you want to have some meetings with people in the community, or if you want to talk to somebody over in Enon and you want to see them face to face, but you want to do it on the phone, let me know and I'll give you all of the information you need to do that.
Hey, Mr. Bridge, I would advise we review the terms and conditions of Zoom before we go sharing licenses. Just a heads up.
Sure. I'll get with Linda tomorrow on that, Casey, and probably do like a conference call just to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
No problem.
Anything else, folks?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cobb. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Dale did.
Yep, I heard Grimm.
Mr. Grimm.
All right, Councilman Rodwald,
Yes.
Councilwoman Noakowski,
Yes.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilwoman Eggleston,
Yes.
Mayor Cook,
Yes.
Councilman Grimm.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn accepted 6-0.
See y'all in a
All
little bit.
right.
In a bit.
we'll Take a short and see you back here at 7.